Hello, and welcome to Setting the Standard, the podcast about wireless radio standards creation from the Wireless Innovation Forum. I'm your host, Stephanie Hamill. Today, I'm talking with Forum CEO Lee Pucker about what our committees have been up to and what you can expect to see on the horizon.
Hi, Lee. Thanks for joining me today.
Sure, my pleasure.
All right, so today we are just kind of doing a run through of what's going on with the committees and where we're going. So let's just go ahead and get into it. I'll start with the Advanced Technologies Committee because that's where everything starts.
Sure. So the Advanced Technologies Committee within the Wireless Innovation Forum acts as sort of an incubator for all the other different committees. They have a number of projects going on at any given time, and those projects can be short-lived, or if they start developing a life of their own, then they might get spun off into another committee. So the first thing that is going on right now, they're doing an update to our top 10 most wanted wireless innovations list. So this list is produced by the membership, and it's basically a list of the top 10 things that our members believe are needed to address shortcomings in existing wireless communications from the point of view of different stakeholders in the wireless value chain, radio manufacturers, software and hardware component providers, operators, service providers, spectrum regulators, so on and so forth. So we did a survey of our members and gathered input from them basically on their views on the existing top 10 list and new innovations, either technical, business, or regulatory, that they feel should be added to the list, and how those new innovations would rank against the innovations that we currently have. Those are being reviewed by the Wireless Innovation Forum's Chief Technology Officer, Andy Clegg, and based on that, he's going to propose to the Advanced Technologies Committee Steering Group a revised top 10 list that we can put in front of our members to ballot.
Great.
Next project that's going on is we have a task group looking at the 3100 to 3550 band. This is a band that the FCC has been looking at for sharing between federal users and the commercial world. They just put out a report and order on commercializing the 3450 to 3550 megahertz chunk of that band. And so the task group has basically been studying that report and order and evaluating its impact on the impact of the rules on the adjacent CBRS band, and how the WInnForum can support the informing incumbent capability initiative that was outlined in the report and order that NTIA will be taking up.
That's a mouthful. You got that out very nicely.
So, all right, so speaking of mouthfuls, so the next group within the ATC is the Unmanned Vehicle Wireless Networking Special Interest Group, which nobody can say, so we all just call it the Drone SIG.
There you go.
The purpose of the Drone SIG is to, right now, is to develop a technical report on the state of the industry on wireless drone networking. And this report is going to provide a description of potential commercial and tactical business models, survey of key intellectual properties to date, a survey of commercial and open source application programming interface models for autonomous networking software, existing open source projects, etc. So that project is being headed up by John Glossner of Optimum Semiconductor Technologies. But we've got a host of people who've been participating from both academic world, from the government side, as well as commercial industry. That group recently just met with our Regulatory Advisory Committee. So they had a joint meeting with the Regulatory Advisory Committee, really looking at how drone networking can be used to support interference determination by regulators worldwide. For those who don't know, our Regulatory Advisory Committee was established to provide advice and guidance to the WInnForum in support of the Advanced Technologies Committee, and it's made up of advisors who are in the regulatory or public policy domains from around the world. So we have participation from Canada, Mexico, Germany, the UK, where else? All over the world.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a nutshell of what's going on in the Advanced Technologies Committee.
Great. Okay, so I think I'm going to hop over next to software-defined systems, because I look at that as one of our oldest committees. I know there's a lot of exciting stuff going on there too.
Sure. Yeah, they are one of our oldest committee. In fact, when the Wireless Innovation Forum was the software-defined radio forum, what software-defined systems committee basically was everything we did. So,
yep.
So their goal is to develop and harmonize software-defined standards worldwide, and they've had a lot of work recently looking at application programming interfaces to standardize things like timing service for software-defined radios, transceiver facilities for software-defined radios, basically looking at developing those standards that can be used in connection with other standards that have been developed by different groups. Another part of what they've been looking at more recently is they've established a liaison agreement with the SOSA consortium. So SOSA stands for Sensor Open System Architecture.
Yeah.
Another tongue twister.
I know. That's why we have all of our acronyms.
So SOSA is basically a part of the Open Group, and is really set up as an alliance of government, industry, and academic members to work together, harmonize, and align, create open standards to facilitate the development of agile, interoperable, and affordable sensors. Now, since there's a wireless component in this architecture, and the wireless interfaces follow SDR standards, the liaison was established with the SOSA consortium, really to allow us to share the standards work that we've been doing related to software-defined radios, and to see how that might be adopted and support the goals of the SOSA consortium. So we had a workshop recently where we interacted with some of the leadership from the SOSA consortium, got their inputs and guidance on what they're doing, and we have a project now within the Wireless Innovation Forum Software-Defined Systems Committee, which is really looking at providing sort of a first input to that group.
Yeah, that's really exciting too. I think there's a lot of promise there. Okay, so moving on. Let's do the Spectrum Sharing Committee.
Sure. So the goal of Spectrum Sharing Committee is to develop standards, certifications, capabilities to support the CBRS ecosystem. As many people know, the CBRS is the band from 3.55 to 3.7 gigahertz in the US, and that's a band that is shared between commercial users and federal users, primarily the US Navy. So in that band, we, the WInnForum, the members of the WInnForum, developed a whole suite of standards to support initial commercial deployment and commercial activities within CBRS. And those standards are now being used very broadly within the CBRS community. All the equipment basically fielded for CBRS right now is using those standards in one form or another. What we've been doing is looking beyond the current CBRS ecosystem to see how things need to expand and developing additional standards in support of that. So one of those areas is the FCC recently completed their auction of the priority access licenses for CBRS. Those licenses have now been assigned to users, and so we're developing recommendations and standards to help establish a leasing market where license holders can lease portions of the spectrum that they own in specific geographic areas to other users when they're not using it themselves. So documents for that are actually in ballot. Part of that is we're going to make some recommendations to the FCC on some things that they can do to help facilitate and support PAL leasing. And we're also developing some standards to make it easier for an ecosystem to develop to make leased spectrum available. And then the other thing we're doing is working on what we call our Release 2 standards. The Release 2 standards are basically adding additional features and capabilities to what's currently in the field, and using that to primarily to support specific segments of the market. So the baseline standards were just what they say, baseline. They support the market as a whole, and now we're looking at Release 2 standards are features that companies can pick and choose from based on their market need or their specific use cases to support their customers. A couple that we've been working on more recently is adding the ability for antennas, multi-directional antenna patterns to be used in determining interference. In the Release 1 standards, the antenna patterns were basically sort of one direction, and this allows multi-direction antenna patterns to be used in determining interference. And then the other thing we're looking at is adding capabilities for things like distributed antenna systems or DAS, which will allow equipment manufacturers that develop those kinds of systems to have a cleaner interface into the ecosystem. So that's what's currently going on with the Spectrum Sharing Committee.
Okay, and I think I'll add to that we do have an open call for CBRS Success Stories. So we are creating a portion of our website dedicated to celebrating CBRS and the use cases. So if anyone out there has any of those, I will include links in the show notes for those to be submitted.
Okay.
Okay, so last but certainly not least, let's talk about 6 GHz Committee.
Sure. So 6 GHz Committee is our newest committee. It's basically the role of this committee is to develop technical reports and standards in support of the new unlicensed 6 GHz band that's just been opened up by the FCC. So a key element of the architecture of the 6 GHz band is the use of automatic frequency coordination, or AFC, to help to ensure that incumbents in the band aren't interfered with by the new unlicensed entrants into the spectrum. So one of the things that we've just stood up within the WInnForum is an AFC functional specification work group, and that work group is really looking at taking the FCC rules, developing requirements for them, and then extending those requirements to make sure a robust ecosystem can be established, supporting unlicensed operation. The first document out of that group is actually heading for ballot as of this morning, and so we'll be publishing the results of that hopefully very soon. Related activity, which will feed into the functional specification work group, is our members are developing a technical report on building entry loss and how that will work in determining interference to incumbents, and it's a pretty detailed mathematical treatment of building entry loss issues, and that also is heading to ballot and will be available soon. One of the other groups established within the 6 GHz Committee is a 3GPP AFC SIG. And the goal of this group is really to perform a gap analysis of existing AFC interfaces developed by other standards organizations. And then based on this analysis, provide technical reports, technical specifications as needed to enable interfacing 3GPP-based radio access technologies, standard access points to AFC systems. In addition, that special interest group is going to ensure appropriate test cases are defined to verify the functionality of 3GPP radio access technologies, the 6 GHz AFC interface, and when the AFC in the system is the system under test, and when the 3GPP radio access technology is the device under test. So that group has just gotten started and is hopefully will have work products available for review by the public shortly. And then the final group, which just got stood up and hasn't even had a meeting yet, is the test and certification work group. This is the group that's actually going to be developing the test and certification specifications and test code against the AFC functional specification that's coming out of the AFC functional specification work group. They have stood up a GitHub repository for this test code, and so that's completed. And I expect the group will get going in earnest in the next week or two.
All right, that's a lot.
It.
That's a lot.
Good. The forum's pretty busy right now. There's a lot of things going on. A lot of new bands that we're looking at, and a lot of work that needs to be done to enable operation, shared operation within those bands.
Yeah, I know that we still have a full slate of meetings every week, and everybody's been working hard, and it's exciting stuff. So I think we will do this again in another few months and get everybody caught up on everything once again, because it's a constantly moving targets. So. Sure. All right. Well, thanks, Lee.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of your day. I will probably talk to you tomorrow.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
All right. Bye-bye.